Hello, everyone. I'm Takumu Courtwade, and this is the first episode of my first City Skyline series. As a student studying political science, I've always been fascinated with history and politics. In the modern age, we take for granted everything we have, from supermarkets to affordable cross-country transportation. In this series, we'll be seeing how a modern world develops, its issues, the challenges, and the crises that can befall a settlement in the pursuit of building a new world. So, without further ado, welcome to the fictional world of Laurentia, which is much like our own, but with many unique differences, as we dive into the story of the city of Auckton. Welcome to the Cardophil Straits. This geological wonder, connecting the Sapphire Sea to the Saris Ocean, was formed 280 million years ago as the Odresh Plate slammed into the eastern Tarath Plate, creating what we now know as the Cardophil Mountain Range, and cutting off what was then the Sapphire Gulf from the larger ocean. As time went on, many rivers and abundant rainfall over the Sapphire Sea led to a rise in its water level. Eventually, the water was able to overtop the Cardophil Mountains, carving out deep canyons and pathways in the terrain. With erosion, these deep canyons have eroded into gentle mountains and rolling hills, with sediment forming large areas for cities to develop. However, the grand metropolises that inhabit the coast of the Sapphire Sea and Saris Ocean only came much later. Far before colonization, this land was inhabited by the native Eladir peoples, forming many tribes and taking advantage of the abundant fish and wildlife. By this time, around 500 AL, these peoples had begun to master farming and basic metalworking, priming themselves for a renaissance. This is where we begin, in the pre-colonial age. Alright, welcome to Auckton. So the map came with a few roads and bridges that I figured I needed to remove simply because if we're starting in the pre-colonial era, then this kind of pre-existing infrastructure simply wouldn't be there. I'm leaving these dams and whatnot simply because it came with the map and I don't want to have to try to rebuild these. I did save the bridges and whatnot. They are very nice bridges. I had this map commissioned some time ago by a wonderful person on the City Skylines map Discord, whose handle I believe is like 0002, if I recall correctly. So yeah, I'm just going through here now and making sure all the roads are gone. And, quickly saving. So yeah, this project is going to be basically me trying to recreate the history of a colonial settlement in a fictional world. Laurentia is very similar to our own world. Most of the cultures have exact analogs. It's a actually fictional world I originally created in D&D that has kind of grown into its own thing, independent of the game. I've been working on it almost since I want to say freshman year of my high school. I have a bunch of maps and all sorts of fun stuff I'll probably show off on here. But yeah, so I was just fidgeting with the lighting and whatnot and getting ready to build. This is my first time doing this sort of project, so I apologize if I sound weird. I'm sure my mic quality is awful. But that's something I will be fixing over time. So I'm going through here and just copying a bunch of these trees with Move It and just pasting them around the place until I have a big enough area to copy a larger chunk, just to make sure this area is like nice and forested. This is not great for performance. I have this video sped up, so you're not getting any of the lag spikes or anything like that. But yeah, a shitload of trees like this, all being rendered at once. I have a 2060 uh, graphics card, and it struggles a little bit. But yeah, so plopping through a bunch of forests, plopping a bunch of trees, and thinning them out a little bit just to make it a little more realistic. I left more trees near the coast and the rivers there, and made it a little more sparse inland because that's quite fertile farmland. And now I'm beginning, I believe, the first of the native settlements. This was all pre-recorded, and I'm just simply talking over it now, explaining kind of the thought process and what I was up to. I got these wonderful dirt roads from City Walk City Wall. I believe he made these for his Mars project. If you've not seen that, I highly recommend you check that out. So I'm taking a lot of inspiration from earlier kind of like historical projects like what's it called? Fredericton by Donati. Along with the new project recently started by Markitect. I was just going through there a moment ago to look for suitable places to build these little tribes. So I was basing this loosely. The climate and everything is based on Louisiana, southern China, more tropical areas like that. Unfortunately, there's really not that much information on native tribes, like what their settlements looked like, that I could find easily at least, on what like tribes in Louisiana used to build their settlements like. The closest I could find was like the teepees, the wigwams, and whatnot. And there was already a good few props by Donati on the workshop from his earlier series. Thank you for that. But so I wound up using that. It has some palisades, wigwams, and the works. So a lot of native settlements, at least in the New England area, were uh, these kind of like circular settlements with big palisade walls around them, with one entrance, and then the wall would circle around to make a single opening, while kind of forcing anybody that's coming in to funnel into one area. So I tried to replicate that as closely as possible. I need to get the prop line tool for City Skylines because plopping these by hand is not very fun. But yeah, so we're just doing that for now. Now that I finally have the palisade wall down, I go through and add a second little road in here. I imagine this is one of the most major settlements in the area. Um, so I figured, it'd have a decent bit of development on the inside of it. Yeah, just making this little loop here. Um, the population of this area in terms of native people is probably quite high. This area I imagine to be very abundant in fishing, wildlife, and all sorts of stuff like that. That would be able to sustain a large native population. A lot of people think that when the New World was settled, it was simply, barren. Not many people. There's I forget what it's called, but there's like a specific myth about the virgin New World, and frankly, that was false. The natives were very prominent in the New World, building all sorts of settlements and civilizations. For example, in my home state of Louisiana, the Caddoan culture built very large mounds as religious sites and settlements as a means to, well, I mean, they made civilization. Um, but when the first Europeans arrived, they came with a lot of diseases like smallpox and plague and what have you that the natives simply were not accustomed to, causing successive epidemics that killed off around 90% of natives. By the time the English arrived in the 1600s, It had been 100 odd years since the Spaniards arrived, and by that time the native populations were just decimated. And that's where that myth comes from, because when the colonists first arrived, there weren't many natives left, simply because they had all been wiped out by disease. In a very specific case, the explorer that came through the Red River in Louisiana brought along with him pigs and other livestock. Uh, the southern U.S. has a very large wild hog population, originating from these pigs, which escaped from, I believe it was DeSoto, his exploration mission. These pigs wreaked absolute havoc on the local ecosystem, and that, along with some of the diseases they carried, are a large part of why the Caddoan peoples are lost a lot of their civilization. By the time the Europeans and French came to settle, uh, if I recall correctly, there were only about 5,000 left, and a civilization of around 100,000, if I recall correctly. I will admit that a lot of this is done with very little research. I'm basing a lot of this off of real world inspiration, yet because this is very fictional, I don't want to copy paste real life cultures into this world, if that makes sense. But yeah, so we currently are in a time period in this series where the Europeans or the European analogs have not arrived, where the native civilizations are thriving and expanding. Uh, I'll place some farms later that kind of show that the natives have begun to master like berry farming and basic crop farming. In small scale, they're still largely dependent on hunting and fishing and what have you. But yeah, they are advancing. That is also something. Like the natives were not primitive. They the natives of our world were not lucky enough to have beasts of burden and other livestock like Europeans did in the old world. So, like, if I recall correctly, there were only llamas that could be considered beasts of burden, which are very fickle, if you know anything about llamas. And that was only in South America with the Inca. Whereas in the old world, there were, cows and goats and what have you, livestock in order to not only farm, but use as a labor. Like having a cow or a horse, or excuse me, an ox or a horse pulling a plow for a field, allowing for much larger scales of agriculture. Going back to the game here, I didn't get a fire, like a bonfire asset from the workshop. So here I'm using like these piles of wood to in the vanilla fire effects to try to make like a central bonfire. I make a couple of these in this settlement simply because it's quite large, and I figured there would be a few fires. I also use some decals to kind of dirty up the terrain, make it look like it's a little more lived in. I'm placing a bunch of wood and stuff around the edges of the palisade wall, kind of as like spare firewood and remnants of when they built the palisade wall. Um, these wigwams made by Donati. What am I doing here now? I'm about to start the farms, trying to find a suitable asset for like I imagine like strawberry or blueberry farming. I found these little flowers that I had already downloaded. So I put them in like loose lines because unfortunately they don't have the adequate tools to do large scale cultivation. And I just go through here and I find a couple more things that could look like crops. Those are just some tropical bushes, and they are definitely not crops. But if you squint your eyes a little bit, it looks like a field of like I don't know, some leafy vegetable. Uh, Here I make a small little orchard of what I say is like fruit berry bushes or something. Like I don't know, blueberry. Blueberries grow on trees. Well, they don't, but you know. Then just a few more external little wigwams and stuff. Then I go through here and I get a few trees and just kind of wrap the forest around the settlement just to fill it in a little, make it look less like it's in the middle of a like make it look less artificial. Then I'm just copying a few little fires out here just to liven up the place. I also feel like this tribe being situated in the woodlands would be quite accustomed to nature, if that makes sense. So I've included a few trees and bushes and whatnot inside the settlement simply for. I figured they would use it for shade along with you know, an internal supply of like firewood, so they could seal off if they need to, and still keep warm, not having to break down and destroy their own houses. So yeah, let's talk about the differences now between Laurentia and our world. So, like I said earlier, this world is based on an original D&D world. So there's a I want this is going to sound so stupid. But yeah, a lot of the history of this world revolves around dragons. So I mentioned earlier that the date was uh AL instead of like, BC. So there was a very large war that wiped out the dragons. So there are no dragons in this world. However, because of the isolation between different people groups during the time of the dragons, uh, different people groups diverged. So there are, elves and orcs and dwarves and whatnot, just like in a normal fantasy world. But rather than being different species entirely, I imagine them more as like just different like subtypes of people, brought on by just long-term geographic isolation. Similar to how different people in our world develop different skin tones to better cope with their environment. Um, so yeah, I imagine the natives of this area to be a more fair-skinned, tall, like almost elf-like people. Uh, Simply because they live amongst, even though it is hot and sunny, they live amongst the woodlands and spend a lot of time crafting and weaving indoors. So yeah, these people are elves in Laurentia. Yeah, making a smaller little settlement over there and copying over the big bonfire. This area, I imagine, was either recently settled, simply because it's a disorganized settlement, because of they're in close proximity to the pond there, which would make for a good fresh water source, along with some fishing if they keep it stocked. Just getting an overview there. But yeah, I figure this is either a newer settlement or just small. Then I'm over here making a small road to the ocean, simply because I figure they have a very maritime culture. So this is a path out to like boats and fishing areas and stuff like that. Over here, there's a nice flat pad, so I'm building a third settlement. This one even smaller. I this network has a thing where like the texture kind of breaks if it turns too sharp, so I'm having to be careful of that. But this area, it's nestled right on the mountains. I figure this is like a poor area for farming, so they're entirely dependent on hunting and fishing. So this is a very small tribe, like itty bitty, maybe only like like 7 or 8 families. To emphasize that, I'm even making the longhouse smaller. But yeah, just doing the same thing again, making these little wigwams. Yeah, just going through the process again. I'm not I'm not a very good detailer. Nothing like the other big city skylines YouTubers like $2.20 or City Walk City Wall. But yeah, I like to think this wasn't too hard, and I think it came out looking pretty good. Now, finally, this is the largest settlement on Auckton Island itself. So Auckton is an island. Uh, it is situated in what's called the Cardophil Straits. Yeah, but Auckton itself is isolated from the mainland. It has a very close connection on the east, which later on we'll see a large road being built over. And on the west side is the Cardophil Strait, like the Cardophil Straits. So the whole geographic area is called the Cardophil Straits. But yeah, to the east is the Auckton Strait, and to the west is the Cardophil Strait. Across the strait is what's called Andlia, and to the east is Odresh. Auckton sits right smack dab in the middle, and is actually part of Odresh after a war. So yeah, as a matter of fact, the ocean that's on this, or the water that's on this side of the island, that all of these villages look out to, is the east side. So the land you see over there is part of Odresh. But yeah, just doing another palisade wall. I didn't want to copy two of them at a time like I did before because it made it look kind of like polygonal. I wanted to kind of get that like more smooth look. So it's painstaking, but you know. But yeah, so this is the largest settlement in on the island. I imagine this tribe is very dominant. Uh, it, I'm unsure currently of how like the tribes will interact with one another. I'm sure, like just like any civilization, they would probably fight amongst one another for land and resources. But with how currently sparse the island is, I'm sure a lot of them have contact with one another and have friendly exchanges. So yeah, I'm just copying over the longhouse because I didn't want to build it again, and then just plopping a bunch of wigwams. Uh, I will link the map down in the comment, or not in the comments, in the description, along with the visual collection. I highly recommend getting this map. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm not showcasing it well enough, truthfully, but it's a lot of great places to build, and I think it looks amazing. Super excited to see what we can do with it on this project. Since this town has more palisade walls, I copy over some of the wood to just show off the extra firewood and extra palisade material, like in the earlier settlement, and just building some external little houses and whatnot. I figured these areas would be a lot less protected from like wildlife and predators, but because a lot of these people are farmers, it's worth it because they can get better standing in the tribe for providing food. Just going back over here and copying the same plants that I used earlier for the berry bushes. I figured this tribe, because it's so much larger, has like quite large fields. So, you know, masters of strawberry, I suppose. I'm trying not to overlap these plants too much because then I feel like it looks too a little too dense, you know, to look like something that's being cultivated. And finally, I go over here and grab the quote unquote berry bushes to make a little orchard. And finally, we start to add some more foliage to the inside of the settlement. I figure this is, this settlement has been here for quite a while. It's not a young settlement, which is probably why this tribe is so like prosperous and dominant over the area. Just adding some trees for shade and then finally, we finish it off. Doing a little pan around just to look at it, see if I've missed anything, see if I need to add anything. And then, yeah, just looking over them one more time. But yeah, before we end this episode, I wanted to actually properly name the tribes. I took inspiration from existing native tribe names around Louisiana, along with other well-known tribe names. So they're not truly my own, but I didn't want to disrespect the native tribes or anything like that. Uh, Off camera, I also placed a bunch of little boats. You can see them there near the water side, just to show that they have a big fishing culture and all that fun stuff. We are nearing the end of this episode. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, thoughts, or criticism, please feel free to comment below and let me know your thoughts. This is my first time doing anything like this. Truthfully, only the second time in my life editing a video. So if you liked it, please let me know, subscribe, I'll do all the things. If you have any criticism or any history that I'm missing or corrections, just, yeah, let me know. I'll do my best to make it right in the next video. I want to sincerely apologize if I got the history wrong or if like I butchered a name or something like that. I sincerely want to respect the cultures that I'm basing this off of while, putting my own spin on it. Well, uh, pretty soon here, I'll leave y'all with some cinematics. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.